Pacers lose again in Atlanta. A horrible start just sinks them. And again, another finish that they can't quite get over. Some head-scratching moments late in a weird game that we'll break down today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy weekend/Sunday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, still in State Farm Arena, where they're cleaning up so there will be noises because we have a lot to discuss. From a noisy game, Pacers lose to the Hawks in a tough one once again. They were great for the last three quarters in total, winning that stretch by 18 points. They were god-awful in the first quarter of this game, and that meant their comeback was not enough. Their fourth quarter close had some head-scratching moments, and they walk out of this building winless, a very, very rare thing. I always talk about this, for a team to lose twice in a row and playing the same team in this kind of situation, but the Pacers couldn't get either one done, and they lose on a day that the Bucks and Pistons both lost. Could have been a huge day, and the Pacers fell flat on their face. I want to start at the end of the game because it's fresh in my mind, and there's lots of moments worth discussing, and we'll get there certainly, that people are very upset about, and we'll get to those. But the start of this game is the story, right? That's why I led the way I did. You know, the Pacers were behind by 20 in a blink, and a lot had to go wrong early for that to happen, but a lot of it was just kind of effort and energy to me in a way that is very hard to quantify or really break down. This game was close-ish throughout that first quarter, even with the lethargic Pacers play. They were down 6-7, hanging in there. 6-point game with 7 minutes to go. 6-point game when the Pacers make their first subs halfway through the quarter. Like, at times, it looked like they were going to be okay. But then TJ McConnell gets hurt at 19-13. We'll get to that later. And I apologize that my computer screen's tilted really far back for this angle, so I'm going to be looking like down from the camera if you're watching on YouTube. Regardless, it was close-ish then, and for the last 6 minutes of the first quarter, I don't even know what the Pacers were trying to do, quite frankly. It was one of the most dreadful stretches that they've had all season. 15-21 with 5 minutes to go in the first quarter. Then the Hawks get it to 11. Pacers finally score again. Then the Hawks get it to 16. In that stretch, the Pacers took several timeouts, and it wasn't clicking. The group on the floor, Jarris Walker, Obi Toppin, Andrew Nembhard, Myles Turner, and I forget who the fifth player was at the time, just wasn't working. They tried to try different Nembhard lineups because of McConnell's early injury, and then like Shepard was the point guard for a few possessions. They couldn't make a three to save their lives, and their defense and rebounding and everything in between was just awful. And it was one of those quarters that was so bad that, again, you can tell when it's an effort and energy thing to an extent. It wasn't just that. They obviously missed a lot of shots that they would like. I tweeted about how many open corner threes it felt like they were missing throughout this game, but like I couldn't even tell what they were trying to do. You know, to go back to Thursday, we talked to Pascal Siakam after the game, and we're talking about, hey, there's no Tyrese Haliburton. Like, what do you have to do differently? And in the clutch, like, what was the problem? And a lot of the stuff he kept talking about was paint pressure. The Pacers getting into the paint to try to create baskets for themselves to generate better threes. And to their credit, like, as this game progressed, they got a lot better at that stuff, right? I don't want to detract too much from that in general, but in the first quarter, the shots they were taking in the paint weren't particularly good. They were 5 for 12 on 2-point shots in the first quarter, with their 5 makes coming from 2 from Turner, who had some nice moments turning around over Mohamed Gay. And then Siakam was being guarded by a taller player in Okongwu, and that made him go 1 for 3, and they were like hesitant to go to him at times. Nembhard was 1 for 5. Sometimes he was trying to take it at Trae Young, which he got too late, but not at all early, and his only make was a 3. Ben Mathurin was 1 for 3. He definitely got it going after that, but didn't start very well. And Obi Toppin was 1 for 2. Everybody else didn't make a shot, and those weren't even good percentages. I just said Toppin, the only Pacers player in the first quarter to make half their shots. Everybody else 40% or worse from the field. Just awful from the Pacers in that frame. Meanwhile, the Hawks were lights out. Trae Young getting into the paint and scoring. He made 3 2-point shots. He made 2 threes. He had 13 points in just the first quarter. And Caris LeVert, who always has played pretty well against the Pacers since they traded him away, also had 10 points in the first quarter. Those two alone exceeded the Pacers' point total just in that first frame. Clint Capella, Onyeka Okongwu, and Mohamed Gay made as many shots as the Pacers in the first quarter of this game. I mean, it was just dreadful what the Pacers were doing on both ends of the floor. And that meant at halftime, I was tracking this stat the whole first half, and I hoped for the story of the game it would end up being the case, just so I could say it. Not hoped as in like was rooting for anything, but the Pacers at halftime of this game had made 8 shots with their starters, to be clear. They made 17 as a team, 9 from their bench, 8 from their starters. Nembhard had 2, Shepherd had 0, Myles Turner had 3, Siakam had 2, Nesmith had 1. That's 8. Trae Young made 9 himself at halftime of this game. Trae Young had 26 points, and that is half of the Pacers total. They were just god-awful early in this game, and it was so hard for them to recover without McConnell especially. Now, to the credit of Quentin Jackson, he was actually very good, I thought, filling in as their emergency point guard. In this game, he gave them energy. He actually guarded Trae Young pretty well. He was getting into the paint. He was diving on the floor, like all stuff that gets contagious, and the Pacers were pissed after their terrible start. They said as much after the game. So it's not that just McConnell was out and they couldn't find a spark. They got a spark from someone else, but they didn't go to Quentin Jackson until the start of the second quarter, and by that point, they were already down 20, and they played, again, pretty well. They were much better than the Hawks the rest of the game. Plus 18 across 3 quarters is awesome, right? In theory, that means you should win a game by 24. They lost. They lost the game because of how terrible that first quarter was. And even to just get a little more specific, right? Didn't feel like they were getting the paint pressure. They weren't making the threes they did generate. They did miss some open corner threes. I was actually confused by their starting lineup choice, right? I mentioned this in the last podcast that I was confused at first when they went to Jarris Walker over Ben Shepherd, but then it made sense. So I saw the Hawks starting 5. I thought, okay, I get why they're doing it, even though I thought they would start Shepherd, and I explained why Carlisle usually thinks this way. But then today, specifically, Bennedict Mathurin was back. And so I thought, okay, if they're going to keep going to what they were doing with Ben Shepherd off the bench to get the shooting there, then they have the signs for the starters on defense, I thought they would start Ben Mathurin. And they started Ben Shepherd, so they made a change. And if Ben Mathurin was not available, I think Ben Shepherd starting would have been the right call. But with Ben Mathurin available, I did not think that made sense. Ben Shepherd was minus 15. He missed all 3 of his threes. He was like, okay, I guess. And so they started him. I think my theory onto why is that they thought he'd be the best option on Trae Young. He was okay on Trae Young on Thursday, right? And then Mathurin came in for him pretty early for foul trouble reasons. And then Mathurin was doing fine on Trae Young. And they didn't go to Nembhard on him. There were a lot that happened in this game, so I didn't get a chance to ask about that. I was very curious about that choice. So, I mean, I guess you need Nembhard's energy for offense. He's your only point guard, especially once McConnell gets hurt. But Shepherd couldn't do it. And Mathurin, I thought, did better at point of attack defense on Trae Young than Ben Shepherd in this game. And Trae Young's best quarter was that first quarter. So, yeah, I've always been a fan of what Ben Shepherd does and said so on this podcast many times. Today, he did not do any of those things. The shot wasn't there. The defense wasn't there. And Mathurin was better than him. And Mathurin started the second half, and Ben Mathurin was very good. We will talk about that later. Deservedly, he deserves a lot of time on this podcast. Had they won, he would have been the lead. He was very good, right? But that was very confusing to me. And then their rotation's already different because of all the many players not available. Sorry, there are some Hawks dancers yelling down on the floor. And then they lose McConnell, and their rotation's just kind of weird the rest of the way. They switched their starters in the second half, but Quentin Jackson was good. They found some synergy with like big lineups that had Nesmith, Siakam, Toppin, and Turner. In this one, their bench was better in the first half than it was for any stretch on Thursday. And that's what makes this game so, if you're the Pacers, and I'm going to talk about the tough trip to Atlanta before some the crunch time stuff in the next segment, and then the good stuff. That's what makes this road trip so tough. And I always, when games back-to-back happen like this, it's so tough to discuss these topics because, for example, if the bench played the way they did today or Saturday when you're listening to this, if they played that way on Thursday, the Pacers would have won, right? And some of that was Mathurin playing, but like Toppin was better and more efficient, and Jackson was good, and you know, they were just better as a unit. It wasn't so tough for the Pacers to have 3 bench guys on the floor at times in this game. They won Mathurin's minutes, they won Jackson's minutes, they won Thomas Bryant's minutes, although I don't think Thomas Bryant played very well in this game. So if they had this bench play on Thursday, they'd have won. If they had Pascal Siakam from Thursday today, they also would have won on Saturday, right? Like they just got flipped performances from a lot of key things, whether it was a second unit, whether it was Siakam, whether it was Turner's first half on Thursday, would have won them this game. Better Nembhard game. The Nembhard game they got on Thursday would have won them this game. Like a lot of stuff just kind of flipped in a way that really hurt them. And that's what makes this trip so tough. They can point to a lot of themes, particularly in the fourth quarter. You know, they were struggling with Trae Young. Their offense wasn't clicking. And a lot of this stuff is themes that suggest, hey, Tyrese Haliburton wasn't playing, and they were a different team kind of searching for ways to be better. And that was very obvious, right? In the clear ways, like not being able to generate as good of threes, both without Haliburton taking them himself and the passing element of it. And the fact that like him scoring and making the Pacers better on offense means they can set their defense and they're better on that, and that never happened, right? And the other guys who were playing instead also were having trouble getting into the paint at a high enough level. That's what made Mathurin seem so good in this game. He got into the paint all the time, and he was passing pretty well. He had a sweet skip pass to the corner. I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll talk about him, I promise. Like, they had enough stuff to split this even without Tyrese Haliburton playing, right? They clearly did. They were winning in the fourth quarter of both of these games, and they lost both. They, in 2025, have 3 losses in a game in which they had a fourth quarter lead. All 3 of them are in the last 9 days. In Miami, the last day of February, and then both of these Atlanta games. Every other game that they've had a fourth quarter lead this entire calendar year, they've won. They found a way to finish in some way, right? That was a maturity sign to me that was coming for them. That was not the case in past seasons. And they've had some slippage in the last 10 days in that way. And some of that is not having Haliburton, who is a great closer. And some of that is their terrible start today. And some of that is a lot of other little things here and there, like other injuries and bad bench play and some brain farts late in this one. And I actually want to get to clutch time next because, they had a chance. They were winning late. They tied it up late. The Hawks had some hot stretches. The Pacers answered. They had the ball with a chance to tie, and then they had the ball with a chance to take the lead in the final 30 seconds. All of it did not go the Pacers' way, despite a furious comeback that they accomplished, right? I could talk about the first quarter being the problems all night, but some people will comment this. I guarantee it. Oh, why are you talking about the slow start? They came all the way back. The end was the problem. Like, that's true. It was really bad. They wouldn't have needed the comeback if not for the slow start. But the end was poor too. The 2 games in a row with bad crunch time. We got to talk about that one here coming up next on Locked On Pacers. Before we get to crunch time and so much more, we got to talk about Prizepicks. Basketball season is heating up, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prizepicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prizepicks, you just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections for a shot, so up to 1,000 times your cash. It's easy to use, available in over 30 states, and lets you mix and match projections across different sports. This week, for example, you could pick Luka Doncic for more than or less than 25 points, or Jason Tatum for more than or less than 8 rebounds. Prizepicks makes it simple. You set your lineups in less than 60 seconds. Stay engaged all game long. When you win, your money hits your account in as little as 15 minutes. No waiting around. And every Tuesday, they have discounts on select player projections up to 25%, giving even more potential value to your lineup. So download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Check out Locked On Hawks next. Brad Rowland. I'm sure we'll have a lot to say about Trae Young's awesome start to the game on the Hawks. Brilliant first half, and they're just enough late in this game. Late in the game. Pacers are going to kick themselves for both these losses, right? They had fourth quarter leads in both. In this one, it was actually their biggest lead of the entire game, or tied for it at 2 about midway through the quarter. They had so many chances, but their defense, timely, right? In the last game, the Pacers took a lead. Then immediately they saw George Niang hit a pair of threes, and I think Reese Shea hit the other one. They were immediately down so much that they could never really make a spirited comeback. In this one, they go up, I believe it was 111, 109. I can't remember exactly what the Pacers' 2-point lead score was. Maybe it was 107, 105 or something. Regardless, I was close. They held a lead at 107, 106 with 5:50 to go. Then immediately fouled Trae Young on a 3, and then immediately Karis LeVert running layup, then a Trae Young floater, then a Karis LeVert runner. Like, right when they got the lead, they had all the momentum. They give up, I can't do math very quickly today for no reason. They give up 8 points in 2 minutes, and they themselves only scored two in that stretch, and all of a sudden they're playing catch up again. To their credit, they did, right? They got just enough buckets to keep up in this game, but the last minute, a lot of head scratchers, right? Credit to the Pacers. Nembhard scores. He was picking on Trae Young a lot in the fourth quarter. Trae Young hobbled after hurting his quad, and he late in particular, he scored the Pacers' last 2 actual made baskets for 4 points. Got him within 2 with 57 seconds to go, and then the Pacers got to stop. Trae Young missed a 3 with 25 seconds to go, and the Pacers had the ball down to chance. And Myles Turner got fouled. This was thing 1 that the Pacers will be kicking themselves for late in this game. 2 free throws, 19 seconds to go, down 2. Makes the first, misses the second one. There's absolutely no analysis to give on this. Just got to make it, right? That's going to be frustrating. That's going to sit with him. He had a chance to tie the game with under 20 seconds to go, and he missed. And then the Pacers got exceedingly lucky that the ball bounced out off of the Atlanta Hawks on the scrum for the rebound. With 17 seconds to go, they get another chance to take the lead. And they went quick. They didn't have to go quick. They could have saved it for the last shot. They went quick. And I actually think if you're getting the shot that they did, going quick is fine. A good Ben Mathurin layup-ish, about 4 feet away. It was not an easy layup by any means, but I'm making this percentage up in my head. I bet Ben Mathurin makes that shot 60, 65% of the time. It's a good look for a guy who has 30 points. He's been playing well in the game, and it was just short. Rebound Hawks. And that was tough for them. So gaff-ish to go early, but they got a good shot out of it. And when you're playing the odds late, you just want to lead, right? So I would have held it for the last shot. I'm not going to kill them for that one. So free throw, then going early. Then Onyeka Okongwu catches the ball in the corner, and the Pacers could foul him, and they trap. They're trying to force a turnover, which is the highest value play. But Onyeka Okongwu, he's, I believe, a 72% free throw shooter. I haven't looked at that in a bit since Thursday, but about there, right? The chances he makes both is about 50-50 if you're at 70% from the foul line, right? So you have a 50-50 shot of the worst case scenario, and the other 50% is he either makes one or makes zero, and then you have a chance to tie or take the lead with just the two. Instead, they don't foul him, and the Hawks get a timeout, which means Trae Young gets fouled instead. He makes both. So the Pacers now have the ball with 7 seconds to go. They get it across half court. The Hawks don't foul. That's a gap from the Hawks. And then they give it to Siakam with like 4 seconds to go. He's getting trapped. I think he said he was getting grabbed. I tweeted the quote. I can't remember the video, but he's getting trapped. He's getting swarmed by Hawks defenders. And in just a moment of brain fart, he just said he made a mistake. Like he owned it after the game, which he had to do because he did make a mistake. He didn't give a specific like why beyond that he was getting trapped. They're down 3 and he just went to the rim, and the Hawks just parted the Red Sea. They didn't care. 1 second to go. Pascal Siakam dunks, and the Pacers were down 3. So they were down 1 with 1 second to go. They fouled Trae Young, who makes the first, misses the second on purpose. Game over. Pacers lose. So between a missed free throw, a going early, which was okay, I thought. But I mean, think about it. The way it went, like a shot at the buzzer down 1 would have been a better chance of winning than what they actually had the rest of the way. That is because Mathurin missed the shot, right? So I actually don't think going early was that bad because it was a good look. But if they had gotten a bad look and gone early, absolutely bad. Not fouling Okongwu and the Siakam dunk instead of 3, just gaff after gaff late. And they were losing before all that started. They did some of their damage in like the, let's say, early portions of clutch time. I mentioned that stretch earlier where the Hawks scored 8 points in 2 minutes. But they just, the start and the end killed them. Without the first 12 minutes and the last 3 minutes. So the other 33 minutes of the game, the Pacers were just way better than the Hawks. Wasn't enough. That's 2 games in a row that they have been, better for the majority of the game. It doesn't matter when they are so much worse for the other pockets of time, whether it's Trae Young ripping off a few 12-0 runs here and there. On Thursday, he was amazing in this 2-game set, by the way, or a dreadful first quarter Saturday. You just lose. That was really rough for the Pacers, who, again, a day they could have made some huge ground in the standings, given other results for the Bucks losing at home to the Magic and the Pistons losing to Golden State. Instead, can't keep up. Lose again with no Tyrese Haliburton. So my notes were comprised of the start, the Ben Shepherd starting question, the clutch time stuff. That was most of the things I wanted to get to today. The last thing before I talk about some of the good stuff, which nobody loves to hear after another tough loss, TJ McConnell got hurt after just 19 seconds in the game. I'm sure the Pacers were thrilled that Haliburton's out. They lose their backup point guard 19 seconds in, and like the McConnell-Nembhard lineups were some of their best outside of crunch time on Thursday. He got hit by Karis LeVert and then never really landed. He landed on Karis LeVert's ankle, or maybe the inverse, whatever. His ankle rolled really bad, and it's the same one that just kept him out for a little bit not too long ago. So it's already like, it's healthy. He's playing, but feels different and has to be prepped for games. So that is tough for the Pacers. I would imagine they have a back-to-back coming up, right? He's not going to play in both of those games. Maybe he could play in one. I don't know how bad it truly is, because sprains are one of those things that you could tell me if you're Rick Carlisle or whatever what the severity is. He didn't even say that after this game. But then tomorrow he could wake up and it could be more swollen or more painful, and then it doesn't matter. So it's hard to say anything there specifically. But if they don't have Haliburton and McConnell, Quentin Jackson just became that much more valuable. Ray J. Dennis will definitely be active for their next game, although I think Quentin Jackson's earned the right to continue playing as their backup 1 if they don't have either of those guys. He was quite good in this game. So that's really tough for the Pacers. It's tough anyway because he's a decent player, but it's really tough when Haliburton is also out. These are shorter ones on the weekend, so a couple good things to run through from this game. And it starts and kind of ends, not really, with Ben Mathurin. Whew. Look, everybody knew he's good. If he was available on Thursday, the Pacers would have won on Thursday. This gives credence to the fact that when his scoring was dipping a little after the break, because remember, he moved to the bench, and I actually thought his first few games off the bench were quite good. And then his numbers kind of tailed off, and I couldn't really say that anymore. I think it's fair to say, and he kind of mentioned as such after the game, that he might have been banged up in those games. And it takes a lot for him to sit out, but between Achilles and knee and wrist was the thing that really was keeping him out, but that he needed these games off. He was amazing. +7 in 40 minutes, which if you can do math means the Pacers were -9 in the 8 minutes he was not in the game. A lot of that was because of the start, but still, he was tremendous in this one. 4 made threes really helps, obviously, but did well to wiggle inside the arc for buckets. If you just looked, you'd see he'd go 5 for 14 on twos. You would not think he was great inside the arc, but he took 10 free throws, right? He was getting in the paint and drawing contact, sometimes making the wrong decision in crowds. He did have 3 turnovers, which is something he's growing through, certainly, but 5 assists. Like, he passed out of those crowds a lot. One of my favorite passes he's ever had in this game in the first half on the other basket that you can't see behind me, where he got into the paint, saw 3 guys, jumped up, and then lefty mostly, it was kind of like a shot form pass, whipped it over to, I think, Ben Shepherd in the corner, a dime of a pass through a defense. And the next evolution of Ben Mathurin's game, since he draws so many players in the paint, the 3 did not go, so no assists recorded, but a beautiful pass. And his reads were pretty good getting off the ball today, and obviously 30 points is 30 points. I mean, the Hawks just didn't have the right guys on him in terms of intensity, and he just took advantage of that. Like, Dyson Daniels was very rarely the cover for Ben Mathurin today. He got to the rim, and he made a ton of key jumpers, and he drew fouls. He was just really great for a lot of this game, and the Pacers would have lost by, making this up, 15-ish without him. I mean, he was just phenomenal, and if he can keep this up, it could be a very important savior for their bench groups. If Haliburton doesn't play again going forward, they've got to start Mathurin to be. They just need more ball handling juice with the starting 5. Nembhard hasn't had the creation that they've needed. Siakam has been scoring really well, but can't be quite the setup man, and Mathurin's not a setup man either. But you just need a little more pop and scoring and oomph on offense without Haliburton in the starting 5, and I think you get it the easiest by starting Bennedict Mathurin, who his defense was good too. Sorry, I'm all over the place. His point of attack defense on Trae Young was pretty good. Maybe the best Trae Young defender they had at times in this game. I thought Aaron Nesmith gave him a run for his money there. But he was very good on both ends in this game. There's a reason he played 40 minutes. And had he, I mean, for his sake, it would have been so easy for my sake of writing stories if he had hit that last shot, because then it would have been a very poetic, was awesome returning from injury, saved them at the end of the game, played really well on both ends kind of stuff. He was that awesome and just barely missed a few shots in crunch time, and a few of them he thought he got fouled on and didn't get a call. One of them, Rick Carlisle was very irate about. I think the Pacers had a few too many moments where they were very upset with officiating where no call was made. Obi Toppin was better in this game, and I only point that out because him and Quentin Jackson both, I mentioned this in the last game, like Obi Toppin, if he's not adding pace to a game when the Pacers are really bogged down, it's really tough for him to add value. He was not doing that Thursday when the Pacers bench was rough. Him and Quentin Jackson did that today. They really added juice and tempo and flow to the game in a very important way for the Pacers. That was very crucial, I thought, at times, and that's why Quentin Jackson was +14. I mean, he made stuff happen out there on both ends of the floor. Thomas Bryant, rough road trip for him, but the bench in general was just better in this game than they were on Thursday in a way that I thought was fairly meaningful. Siakam came alive at moments. He got to 23, 6 and 3. But he was +13, I thought, in large part because of his defense. His defense was very good in this game. The way the cross-matching worked kind of allowed him to not be so glued into a non-shooter on the offensive end, whether that was Okongwu or Mohamed Gay. He was very good as well in this one. So they had good performers. Siakam, good. They had some good bench play. They found ways to up the tempo. Mathurin was exceptional. They just stunk for the first 12 minutes of action and then tripped over their own feet a few too many times in the final 90 seconds of play. That one stings for the Pacers. That'll be a frustrating one that'll lead to, hopefully for them, some spirit on Monday, because a winless road trip right now, given that they're playing 3 teams with losing records, would be very tough, especially because they're coming in on the biggest week of their season. Milwaukee twice this week. Both games, Pacers on back-to-backs, and Milwaukee rested. So Pacers need to find a way to win those ones and play better than they did in Atlanta. In these games, having Haliburton back, should he be available, TBD on any of that, would go a long way, but they need some better defensive principles. They still had some confusion moments, I thought, in this game. They just need to play better. The play better adjustment. Hit that button if it's possible. If they're missing McConnell, if they're missing Haliburton, if Mathurin can't play back-to-backs, it's going to be really tough, but they got to find a way. Good teams find a way. They were finding ways in early February when they were playing bad. They did not find a way in either of these games. I'll have more via writing and such on Forbes coming up soon, but thank you guys for listening and watching this one. Again, your support and is why I'm able to go to stuff like this. I'll be in Chicago Monday too, so more coming there. But again, thank you guys for listening. You can find me on Twitter at Tony R. East and in Blue Sky, same handle. This podcast is on Twitter at Locked On Pacers. Thank y'all for listening. Have a wonderful day. We will see ya on Monday.